that became that sort of turning point to like for brands that went from, I need to spend a lot of money on advertising to push media on TV to like, oh wait, I can sort of control a bit of my own destiny of storytelling and build a robust like buyer's journey, right? And so like a lot of our clients now are doing some really impressive explorations of using like cinema robots. So these like really elegant camera moves that are highly like repeatable and precise, so they can get these complex stories told in a like very interesting and dynamic and unique way, right?
We're going through something absolutely historic.
Technologies across the board are growing exponentially.
It's a disruption that's going to completely redefine the way businesses compete.
In the next decade, we're going to lose 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies.
The exponential growth of computing is continuing.
AI is nowhere near its full potential.
Whether you like it or not, that the future cannot be stopped by anyone.
Welcome back to the Future Tech and Foresight podcast. I'm your AI host, Mark Verbenkov's deepfake avatar, and this is episode number 215. This episode delves into the evolution of video marketing, tracing its growth from early digital platforms to today's AI-enhanced production workflows. Listeners will gain insight into how organizations balance creativity and technology, integrating tools like ChatGPT to streamline editing, story generation, and content delivery across platforms. The conversation highlights how immersive production tools, XR stages, and automation are transforming both efficiency and quality while maintaining authentic storytelling. The discussion also examines the nuances of B2B versus consumer marketing cycles, showing how trust, ROI demonstration, and multi-stakeholder engagement shape strategy. Tim and Mark explore the parallels between digital transformation and AI adoption, emphasizing the importance of understanding technology's role without compromising creativity or audience trust. Listeners will hear practical advice on leveraging AI responsibly, fostering internal creative cultures, and navigating ethical considerations in content generation. Now, a little bit about today's guest. Tim Bradley is the co-founder of Pennant Video, a B2B-focused agency that has pioneered the video marketing trifecta TM to power mid-funnel marketing strategies. With nearly 2 decades of experience in video marketing, Tim has partnered with leading B2B tech brands like Cisco, Hitachi, Philips, and countless startups, bringing their stories to life with compelling video campaigns. Tim has built an engaged following on LinkedIn by being relatable, authentic, and authoritative, with equal parts actionable insights and compelling storytelling. He believes strongly in the power of community and mentoring, that connections mean more than just a numbers game, and that young creatives deserve the wisdom he's gained over a long and ongoing creative career. His philosophy is simple: create meaningful connections through impactful stories that resonate and endure.
Great. Well, Tim, thank you very much for coming onto the podcast today. Looking forward to having a chat. Thanks for coming on. Yeah, thanks, Mark. Psyched to be here. Let's go. So, how did you get involved in what you're doing? We're going to be talking about AI, video marketing. What brought you into the world that you're in now? Yeah. My sort of like heartstrings answer is my dad had this like big clunky VHS camera when I was a kid, right? And so it was just like, he's of course recording our birthday parties and like baseball games and things like that, but he also like let me play with it, right? And like understand just sort of that opportunity to record and tell stories, or like sort of imagination with my kid brothers, right? And like stop motion animation with Legos, and sort of just that like pure sort of creative exploration at an early age, I think definitely sort of helped me down the path. And then through my like college career of communications, and then my sort of like DIY startup into sort of like freelance world, right? Like I did the classic, got out of college, opened that first credit card, immediately dropped way too much debt onto it to buy, the MacBook Pro and the sort of prosumer camera. This was sort of like DSLR-esque era, right, of digital media, and just full sort of immersion, right? And then just through, time and craft and working with all sorts of, brands and different capacities of producers and marketers. It just sort of, I arrived at that path of like short form digital storytelling on behalf of brands, right? And so
the majority of my like professional career, which is pushing, I guess like 15, 20 years now, right, has been like really in that way. And so that would be working with brands that are like Kickstarter, the earliest of days, through like Fortune 5, right? Everything from like retail and travel tourism to, consumer electronics to everything B2B, which is like largely where I am now. So telling these like complex and, complicated messages through the power of story, right? On behalf of brands that are in these like highly technical and innovative and therefore competitive spaces like, climate technologies and cybersecurity and healthcare and medical and life sciences and the like, right? So kind of a broad career, but I'm really enjoying it.
Super interesting. So obviously we're gonna touch on how AI is impacting this world, but I think before we get into that, you've had a long and illustrious career in this. Could you touch on maybe some aspects of how things have changed over, say, the last 10 years or 15 years before kind of AI really made a splash in this world?
Yeah, sure. And it's funny, like coming out of college, or like kind of through college and coming out of college. So this will date me immediately, but that sort of like 2005, 2006 timeframe was like right when, right at the cusp of like digital, right? So everything went from sort of film to digital media and recording and the DSLR and et cetera. And that really sort of compounded the need to distribute it, right? So like YouTube became a thing, right? And so that, in that sort of 2008, 2010 timeframe, it was known as like the destination for cat videos and like homemade videos and things like that, which is I love because it's sort of that spirit of creativity and exploration that I think we all like love to live in whenever possible. But that became that sort of turning point to like for brands that went from, I need to spend a lot of money on advertising to push media on TV to like, oh wait, I can sort of control a bit of my own destiny of storytelling and build a robust like buyer's journey, right, on platforms like YouTube. And then of course there's Vimeo and Wistia and all the sort of like marketing platforms that have come to bear since, right? So that was like one major one, was just like, wow, you can upload to a destination on your own and you're off to the races. And then I think the other is kind of where I'm living at now. Well, I'll answer that a different way. There was a couple years ago of like introducing really robust tools and technologies to like help propel the like visual storytelling. So like a lot of our clients now are doing some really impressive explorations of using like cinema robots, right? So these like really elegant camera moves that are highly like repeatable and precise, so we can get these complex stories told in a like very interesting and dynamic and unique way, right? We're also using XR stages, or like virtual production stages. So if you've seen like The Mandalorian, or if you're into that show, right? It's like all that shot on a sound stage that is just like basically huge LED walls of screen, right? And so we do that also. We have a production coming up shortly with a healthcare brand, and so we're creating a hospital-like environment to get across this really like a data story, but use characters and actual like props and set pieces, but use the virtual background to help infuse like that storytelling that takes place in a hospital-like environment, right? So this sort of like explosion or adoption of like very robust like technical tools, like hardware tools, like robots and virtual stages and the like. And then of course now it's AI, right? It's like everything is really that creative power is at the fingertips of the people that are like want to explore and to sort of take this thing that's like in your brain that you can dream about, or you can sort of like start to realize, but now you can sort of synthesize it and iterate on it and start to really make that dream a reality, I would say.
Very interesting. Can we touch on your clients as kind of like a general idea here? Not, I don't need specifics about your clients. When this kind of digital transformation started to happen, and you were, obviously taking on clients, were you finding certain businesses that were all, like at the vanguard of this, that were like, oh, like this is what we have to do. We have to start publishing everywhere. And then maybe a couple of years later, you came across ones that were just like, we don't know what we're doing. Like we've never done any of this before.
Yeah.
We're still in the traditional mindset. I mean, I think obviously that was happening. Could you maybe touch on maybe the mindset of these kinds of different types of organizations?
Yeah, I love that question. So I think it's always like the closest you are to the decision maker or the buyer, like that sort of path of resistance is much shorter, right? So largely anything consumer, right? Especially like consumer products like clothing and footwear and apparel and things like that. Like they're the quickest to adopt because it's like, well, you can buy these readily, right? And then you're immediately like wearing them. And it's a lifestyle oriented thing. So you want to show people living said lifestyle. And that's why car commercials are habitually always successful, right? So this sort of like allure of what's possible, I guess. But when you start looking at industries that are like a part remove or however many sort of Kevin Bacon's removed from that buyer, right, is when it gets more complex. And so in the world of like business to business or B2B where I exist is like these are really complex stories, not just because of like the technology and like in sort of the value that we're trying to describe here, but it's like the buying decisions for these brands is the B2B is complex, right? It's like, yeah, there's usually the person who is feeling a pain point in this moment and is looking for that solution, which should be our client in that way. So you gotta build trust and a sense of belief, and ideally like ready to convert them. But then they have some sort of a boss or a CFO, someone who's holding the purse or the money, and then sometimes executive like CEO leadership. If this is like a sort of a big sort of like change across an enterprise, so in B2B, these sort of buying cycles or sales cycles can be many, many months, if not even like a year, you know what I mean? So that's when it's harder to sort of prove like the perceived like ROI of work like this, because it's not like that sort of attribution of like, I know exactly why this person came to my doorstep to buy this product is not as clear in that way. Right.
Right.
But that's why I love it. Cause like you can sort of take the right, like creative risk to differentiate yourself or your brand. Right. Or build that trust in that buyer's journey. And that's the win that we're all going for. Right.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting. Were these organizations like changing the structure of, say, their marketing departments, or like were they bringing on internal creative teams to help them navigate this new, we're still in like the digital transformation age. And the reason I'm asking these questions is I want to maybe trying to find some corollaries to the new AI age.
I love it. All right, great. Right? Yeah, man. Yeah. So absolutely. Like, I use the word like adoption, right? Like it's sort of like a signal to us as a creative, creative agency to like, is there adoption within that organization for the medium? For us, it's video, right? So like, is there like, does executive leadership buy in to the fact that this medium is very powerful, right? That it is the most preferred medium by audiences everywhere, right? In the earliest days, so I would say like the 2010 to 2015 or even 2020, honestly, it was like that was a really stark contrast to like the sort of the believers, or at least the ones that recognize the power of video and storytelling in this way on behalf of brands, and the ones that are just like, I don't, it's too complex, or like I don't totally understand like how you even make that thing. It feels like a bit of magic or almost, and like totally fair, totally valid. But now most of the brands that I'm seeing that are like worth their salt have invested in the medium so much that they have internal teams that are producing regular content to keep this sort of like fandom going across, especially across like social channels, right? But
Yeah.
and we love working with those types of brands because that signal that they respect, value the power of video marketing internally is like, great, we can come in and help them sort of level up production value and storytelling, and sort of build out their buyer's journey a bit more strategically.
Okay. Great. So, because I've had so many guests come on over the last, say, year and a half, ever since, well, I guess now almost 2 or 3 years since ChatGPT kind of exploded onto the scene,
Yeah.
talking about AI and its changes in organizations, right? Like whether it's your accountant or your secretary or assistant or whatever, starting to use ChatGPT to become like multiplying your capabilities throughout the day. You also have the entire organizational culture understanding the value of AI and its ability to kind of superpower an organization. So I'm assuming here that, as with the digital transformation that you're describing, there's this new AI transformation. Organizations are becoming more aware of the value of AI, and they are not just understanding it as a general powerful tool, but able to see, oh, it's useful here and here, and like in different verticals. And then your vertical would be one specific one. So, I mean, that's a kind of a perfect natural segue into what you're doing, and maybe just touching on also the transformation of AI and what we're seeing now.
Yeah, I love that. And it's the thing I caution folks when they're like, oh, AI, even though it's 2 letters, it's a very, very broad subject matter, right? And it's like, it's hard to sort of like recognize how it has like entered into our nomenclature and sort of like day-to-day operations of things. And you see it most prominently in the digital tools that you're using most regularly, right? So for us as a video agency, like we use tools like, linear software editing and music and motion graphics and sort of all these little things. And so for us, let's take an interview, for example, right? So we record this interview, we pull it into Adobe Premiere, and like the first thing that we can readily get today within a matter of seconds that we couldn't, just a handful of years ago, is like a transcript, right? So just like immediately to get all that audio, get that transcript, great. Now we can extract said transcript and use that to start like story mining or like writing our story using the words that the people actually said in their interview, right? And so we can use that. We can leverage ChatGPT to sort of compare, contrast, sort of like tones and themes, and like effectively like write the story the way we want to, and then go back into Premiere with the transcript and be like, great, these are the parts of that transcript of that story we want to use, and it'll like effectively like delete everything else. So now it's like, great, we have the story and we can get creative, right? So the way I've sort of like encouraged my team to think about is that like, yeah, it's alarming how at the sort of pace of this innovation, and like, is this going to take our jobs? Like that type of like scare factor is like, well, I really don't think so, because like we've always just been curious and creative problem solvers, right? And like that's inherent in all of these phases of your journey. It's just sort of the nature of your day to day. You're going to continue to explore, and you're going to continue to improve on your craft. And these tools help you expedite certain parts that used to be very, very, very tedious and time consuming, to like allow you to get to the thing that you actually want to do, which is like, express and to create really rich visuals, and to create a mood or to create the, just like work on behalf of the audience's intentions, or like their desires, right? So it just helps remove some of those like barriers of tediousness, I guess.
Right. So for you, it's an augmentation tool rather than a replacement tool. How about crafting the actual story and narrative? So you were talking about some of the brand, like healthcare, for instance. You have this example coming up. You mentioned it's quite complicated sometimes to communicate the message, the story in, a couple of videos or one video. I'm assuming here that ChatGPT or just any of these AI tools is facilitating largely that story creation now, because you're able to come up with, I don't know, instead of 1 or 2 different variations, you can come up with 10 that are reasonably robust. I mean, why don't you explain it to me? So
Yeah, no, I mean, you're really on the path, right? So it's like, we can take any combination of discovery calls that have been recorded with an AI transcriptor, like it as part of the conversation on Zoom. Take, the brand book, which is, sort of their brand narrative and their, how they position themselves and their tone of voice and, sort of like their expression of the visuals, like color palette and font, and like what those are supposed to represent, and like sort of the synthesis of like brand. We can talk to, the sales team or the marketing team and like amass all of their their material relative to this project, or like, let's take like a product launch or something, for example, right? Their website, just sort of all the key components that are like the sort of pillars of this brand. And then we can be the curious creative problem solvers working on behalf of the audience and be like, okay, we understand this is what their buyers desire in this moment. Now, how do we take the bulk of this information and ensure it's reflective of this audience and not just like brand, sort of like speaking at them, you know what I mean? So yeah, like that's really been a very helpful jump off point. The caution there is to like, we don't we don't want the chat GPT to like force feed us into like that singular direction, right? It is like, all right, well, how can we start exploring using this tool, using chat GPT as like a creative collaborator, right? We can like prompt it with questions or like poke holes at like a certain direction and mood, right? Or like a certain emotion, like, all right, well, if we wanted to go more humorous, like how might we approach this, or like if we want to go a voiceover route versus a text on screen route, like how might we approach this? So there's it's become that sort of like collaborator, right? But yeah, it's almost never do we want to take what it exactly says the first time and like call it gospel and thing,
Which is maybe what some of these organizations are doing that, are just starting to, well, maybe not just starting, but since COVID have started to really digitize and are maybe now exploring these options. I've hired a couple people that just used ChatGPT and gave me the very first thing that it spat out. It's like, okay, well, this is garbage. Please go back.
Slop. This is slop. Yep. Yeah, exactly. And so it's, yeah, I mean, I think that goes back to like the, kind of character of the person who's wielding this tool, right? It's like you like we have a lot of power as creatives, really, to make sure we're taking the right amount of care to like progress the experience that this audience needs, right? Like our whole business is about like empowering decision making, right? For these audiences on behalf of these brands. And so there's always a considerable amount of caution to like, will this tool like erode trust if we take a shortcut, right? Like shortcuts do not equal trust most of the time, right? So it's just like when we're doing this, it's like doing it for the right, like make the next best right decision. You know what I mean? When you're using these tools.
I think that's a really good general point to double click on here is trust, right? So I've had numerous AI experts come onto the podcast, and one of the things that they seem to all state at some point throughout the interview is the how to describe it, the destruction of trust on the internet with content that's going to be put out, right? It's sort of starting to happen where you can't tell whether it's AI or a human video made. Are you starting to see some of that, like trust erode in maybe not the work that you're doing, but just in general? And then how do you think that's going to play out over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I call it similar, like the erosion of trust, right? So it's like, I think probably synonymous, but erosion is like little bits at a time, and the next thing you know, you're your cliffside estate is in the ocean, right? So it's that cautionary tale. So yeah, I can think of a couple sort of resonant, like immediate examples of like conversations we've had with our clients the last month. I'm gonna omit a lot of names here. So we have one very creatively ambitious client that is often heaving examples over to us of like, we should try this, we should try this, we should try this. And it's like, I love that. I love that that's that sort of spirit of like collaboration and whatever, but it's just the set the pause and be like, that looks really cool, but like, why are we doing this? Like just because like my creative director, Ben, says all the time, he's like, just because we can doesn't mean that we should. Right. So it's just, again, like always trying to be objective and putting ourselves in our audience's shoes to like make sure we're doing the right thing on their behalf. Cause that's where trust lives and dies. Another client, this is more like internal stakeholder, like internal team trust that we're sort of on the path with them now, is like they asked us to record a couple dozen members of their like leadership team to create AI avatars. And I know you have one in the show, right? And so it's like, there's a lot of power in that, right? Like, does it help onboard to sort of the most FAQ of things? Like that's where I know they're trying to go with this. And it's like, quick, that I can largely get on board with that, because it's like it's almost like adopting a different type of like standard operating procedure, like an SOP to like onboard a team to a system in a more I caution to say human, but a more like human way than just like, here's a document, read this, now go figure it out, right? So there's a bit of that, but it's like it's pretty easy to get kind of greedy as a like an executive leader, to be like, well, now I can just have this do everything everywhere, because look how many keystrokes this took for me to do this, and now I have all this time back, and it's like, that's really great for you, man, but like, what is being received on the other end of this thing? Is that building trust at each of these points, or is it eroding trust? So I think it's just human nature to be like, I want to do this sort of as like swiftly and efficiently and whatever, like maybe not human nature, but you know what I'm saying? It's like easy to go down that path of like swiftness, efficiency, time gained back. I think we can't bottle up time, right? And we all want more time. So like I very much empathize, like this is the route, like this is an easy path to go down, but is it the right path? Does it build that sort of the moat, the brand moat we all aspire to build, right? That's from my seat.
Yeah, well, the reason I asked that question is because the sense that I'm getting with all this AI slop, that not just a couple brands, it seems like most companies and even individuals like influence, etc., they're going to start, if they haven't already, they're going to start at least trialing or testing this stuff. The trust of individuals, the trust of brands is going to be maybe even more important over the next couple of years and into maybe the foreseeable future than maybe anything else that you put out on the internet, right? Like, you can talk about how great your company is, you can talk about how great your product or service or your team is, but if you don't develop trust with your audience, when there's a cacophony of all of this stuff that people are publishing now, it kind of seems like, yeah, trust is going to be kind of the linchpin in marketing, in business communication, going into the future. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You are not wrong.
Yeah.
Full thought. Yeah. I mean, it's so what does that mean though? It's like, as lame as it sounds, it's like back to basics, right? Like the power of story, like introducing conflict and resolution. Like, what's the sort of best way to approach that, right? Like, how do you consider like engagement throughout that? And that comes with things like tone and sentiment and pacing and sort of the things that are like inherent to creativity at large, and so it's these factors that will never change. I can strongly say that, right? So it's like, but what is the wrapper? What is the visual thing that you can control best to assure that those mechanics stay true is important.
So do you see a time where all of these AI tools, if used correctly, support a brand's ability to generate a lot of content, but maybe done with, say, your guidance done correctly, so that it generates trust? And I want to throw in another point here. Many of my guests have been emphatic in the point that the organizations that are using AI are going to just absolutely dominate those that don't. And maybe in the video, B2B marketing area, this might be that point where you can develop trust with a lot of content if it's done correctly, compared to another organization that's, maybe starting to do some content, but it's like AI generated videos to save time, as you were saying. And that erodes trust for the audience that they're trying to hit.
Yeah, I have a couple responses to this. Like, there's an opportunity to leverage technology to like have to cut out the sort of like most like sort of annoying parts of the creation, which is not even the creation, of the delivery, right? Is like, we stand up this very thoughtful and impressive sort of flagship asset, right? That is like gonna motivate, inspire, break through the noise. But then we need it in all the different sizes. We need it as square. We need it as 16:9. We need it as 9:16. We need 15-second versions. We need 30-second versions. We need animated GIFs. We need static frames. We need XYZ. And it's like, okay, well, that can be a person's better part of a day or two to like produce that manually. Or you can leverage technology to like iterate on that, and you're off to the races, right? So it's like, yeah, it is removing a little bit of that like doing, but you can use that doing in other places, like to so it's like, so the center of the target, or that flagship asset, like, remains true to its core and its spirit, but you leverage the tools and the tech to help you like get it across the number of channels that you need to show up on in front of your audience, right? So that's one. And then same thing, like iterations of like, this is probably more specific to like a product or like a consumer good, is like colorways, sizing, just sort of all the aspects of like making a unique sell to that individual, right? Is like, oh cool, I can see this couch in this sizing, these dimensions. I can see it in my living room, like up and have the picture, the orientation I can have. You get it, right? So it's like, but what is that really all? What are we saying those are? Like, that's experience, right? Like, that's that experience with the audience or your buyer with that brand. So just, yeah. Starting to repeat myself here. Sorry.
So no worries. So we've touched on AI. We've touched on trust. What's next over the next couple of years? Is there something that we're missing here? You mentioned XR earlier on in the conversation. Is that something that we should touch on?
Yeah. So like at XR stage is that like virtual production stage, which is that LED like wall, right? So like, what's really impressive about that is it's like, it is built on small LED panels, and then you can make them as big as you want. You got like the Sphere in Las Vegas, but you can have one that's significantly more modest, right? And the fact is, you could put like 2D sort of flat elements on that. So this sense of, like we call it like a plate, but like you take a video of some scenic, whatever, like a lake or something, right? And cool, you can put that on that effectively and use that to like make it seem like your on-camera talent is at this lakeside, right? Or you can use LiDAR technology to like scan that lake and then pull that into the space, and then use sensors within the room attached to the camera, and now the camera moves and you get that like parallax effect of you're at this lakeside, right? Because you have all the data as part of that. So it's like kind of that other level of like, oh, you can, I could be in Tokyo and Rio and Barcelona and Vancouver, and I never even left this studio, so it's sort of like has this impressive unlock. Or for us, it's again, it's like going into places like a hospital setting that, like, first of all, how impossible is it to like do anything and like to do any sort of marketing inside of a hospital? Because like,
Right.
the HIPAA red tape everywhere, and it's just like, the patient privacy, like all of it, right? And that's appropriate, and it should be that way. But when you're trying to speak to an audience that is clinical in that way, like, we can have a hospital like setting, that's pretty specific, So yeah, that's all really powerful, and I'm seeing these creative technologists that I'm friends with, like, leverage AI, and sort of Unreal Engine and like the impressive sort of software and the hardware of the physical room, to like, how do you create these very like immersive worlds, and then you put your talent, your characters, your practical props and environments, and like really like sell this as a place that you can control things like lighting and weather.
Mm. So this is going to make, or is making, video creation simpler. You can do more of it, right? I guess you could have like a CEO come in and do multiple takes in his different parts of his organization, or different, environments that his organization is working at, all at once, without traveling to every single place throughout an entire week or something like that. It can all be kind
That's
of
exactly right.
afternoon.
Yep. So there is like, an economics factor. There's like an environmental factor, so there's a lot of that is really is exciting, but yeah, it's always goes back to like, is this like unique and authentic and adding value to this audience, so those types of decisions.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, that CEO could go on Mars, you know what I mean? So it's like, not to lean to like, Hollywood, Marvel cinema or anything, but it's like that's like what's become much more possible to those of us that aren't at that Hollywood scale, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I wasn't going to ask this question, but it just popped up into my mind. What about the cultural changes in society? How is that? I mean, I would assume that that's playing a large aspect in creating material, video content that's relevant for your consumers. Is like language changing? Is, like, you maybe need to have a stronger hook at the beginning to make it more attractive, because we are inundated with so much stuff, good and schlop. How's culture impacting the work that you're doing?
Big time. Yeah, it's like, creativity is often at that forefront of innovation, right? So like, we've been seeing a lot of this, like the tells and, sort of AI writing for a long
Mm,
time, and
mm,
it's like everyone is now, most whatever, just normal folk, right? Are like seeing it and are exposed to it. And it's like, so
mm.
culture, I mean, it will always evolve and always, continue to mature and et cetera. So I think, if I was going to make any type of prediction, is that like the the core things, like storytelling, as I said earlier, will like remain true, but everything digital, everywhere, always on, always available on all devices all the time. It's like, the pandemic really forced a lot of that too. I think people are trying to break from that, and there's a lot more like, how do we show up in person? How do we show up and have like real discussions in real time? And I think that's gonna, really set people apart, like people that it can like actually hold a conversation and like actually be inquisitive and ask good questions and be curious and be explorers, right? Versus like, oh, the machine will just tell me what I need to know, So it's going to be really, really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's certainly an interesting future that we're moving into. Um, I see kind of our time is winding down here. I want to kind of give an open question for you, to mention anything that we may have missed with regards to the future, with regards to, what's relevant for businesses to think about today, like what kind of mistakes to avoid, just kind of what you think is, kind of an important thing to let the audience know.
Yeah, I was in sort of like an intimate dinner last night with a bunch of creative founders, and AI took up quite a bit of the conversation appropriately. And some of my takeaways were that, like, do not run away from it. You also don't have to run like directly towards it if that doesn't like sort of inspire you, you know?
Mm.
It will seep in to all of this software that we're using. Like any piece of software that we are using naturally in our creative process, that technology is adopting the AI tools. And so it's your responsibility to like continue to leverage the tool you're already empowered by, you know, and to do it that way. So, you know, and then it's just speaking of culture inside of studios and creative agencies, right? Is like not so much of like a mandate, but it should definitely be like part of the culture to explore and to share those explorations, you know, with these tools that are these video creation tools that are available, you know, because we have clients that ask like, well, couldn't we just do this in AI? And it's a really like, there's a lot of caution in responding to that, because it's like, well, you probably could, but at what sort of cost, you know? And and especially when we're talking about things like erosion of trust, which is the most important part.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. So the theme and the trend holds true. It's AI is going to be, whether you want it or not, brought into everything, and make damn sure you're starting to use it and understand how it works, because whether you're not, even if you're not using it today, you're certainly going to be using it tomorrow. Awesome. Tim, I'll have your website and LinkedIn up on the show notes. Any other place that you guys are active that you want people to follow and reach out to and see what you're up to?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, so LinkedIn is our main spot. I'm very active on there, and then my business, Pennant Video, like the flag. So pennant.video or pennantvideo.com is where you can find our website.
Perfect. Thanks for coming on. Very very interesting insights into the world of video editing and the future of it. So thanks again.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, thanks for listening to this week's Future Tech and Foresight podcast. If you like what you've heard here, there are, of course, a number of ways that you can support the podcast. The best way would be to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give a rating on Spotify, which you can find a step-by-step explanation for on the futuretechandforesight.com website. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment either on the episode show notes or the YouTube channel where you can see video recordings of the interviews. And finally, if you are part of an organization that is aware of the disruptive and transformational impact that emerging and future technologies will bring and want to know more, please get in touch to hear about the strategic foresight services that we offer and how we can help future-proof your organization and take advantage of the phenomenal opportunities available to survive and thrive in the future.
A lot of future-shocked people and future-shocked institutions in our society. They're simply overwhelmed.
Once there is superintelligence, the fate of humanity may depend on what the superintelligence does.
Science fact is catching up to science fiction.
The first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make.
The only scarcity that will exist in the future is that which we decide to create ourselves as humans.
Within a 10-year design revolution, we can have all humanity living the highest standard of living anybody's ever known.
Progress is accelerating at an exponential pace, and it's going to reach a point where progress is so fast it's going to be a singularity.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens.
Every single headline points to the birth pangs of a Type 1 civilization.